All right, folks, here we are. We're here because you don't like annual reviews, and you're not alone. Nobody, of course, there are exceptions. Aside from few exceptions, nobody likes annual reviews. People dread them, and people at every layer, at every level of the organization, people hate annual reviews, but they're still doing them for all kinds of reasons, some good and some not so good. But what I want to do today is give you the opportunity to leave annual reviews, this dreaded time wasting tool, in the rear view mirror and never look back. So let's take a moment to motivate ourselves to get rid of our annual reviews. Why aren't annual reviews good? Well, let's talk about all the time and attention and resource that goes into annual reviews. I can't count the number of business owners and executives that I've talked to who say, well, we might as well just write off the whole month in terms of productivity. It's just going to be a write off this month because managers are focused so intensely on the annual review. And it happens every single year. Every single year, there is 1 month that goes into the trash can, and people feel like there's no way around it. So, why else are annual reviews not so good? Well, they create anxiety. They create anxiety for the business owner, for the leader of the business, because there's all of this stuff that needs to get done on behalf of clients, on behalf of customers, in order to meet deadlines and in order to launch important initiatives and get important products out the door. There is all of this stuff that needs to get done. And as we said, this month is a write-off in terms of accomplishing those things. So it creates anxiety for people at the top of the organization. It creates anxiety for every single manager because it's going to be a lot of difficult conversations that aren't that productive, that maybe go nowhere. And it's also all of this time that they are dedicating to something that is not what they themselves are evaluated on. They're not evaluated and they're not measured. They're not rewarded for the quality so much of their reviews. They tend to be rewarded for the results. And the reviews are a distraction from those results. And reviews are anxiety producing for the people. Every single person who is being reviewed has some level of anxiety, even if they've been performing beautifully, even if they've been getting great feedback all along, they've got some anxiety about the annual review because it takes them away from their work, because their continued employment and their compensation is often tied to the results of these reviews. And most of us have experience with having reviews that are surprising. They bring surprising results that we are not happy to see. Bad news surprises. So those are a couple of the reasons. And the last reason that I'll name that annual reviews are not good is that they don't actually accomplish their objectives. So it kind of pains me to do this, but I want to look at one of the things that a top-notch university said about annual reviews. Here's this report from a top-notch university that says the purposes, I won't name the university, the purposes of the annual performance evaluation process are to promote communication and provide useful feedback about job performance, to facilitate better working relationships, and to provide a historical record of performance to contribute to professional development. So these are the four reasons, the four things that an organization is intending to get out of annual reviews. And I'll add that the fifth, which is that many organizations use the annual review as a basis for determining compensation increases. But this very same document from this university goes on to say, and by the way, this is not part of their education. This is part of how they are guiding people in their organization to give reviews. Continuous feedback of employee performance is an important aspect of the supervisor's job. It constructive feedback on regular basis. The supervisor gives the employee information about work performance and allows appropriate time to make corrections in performance and behavior. And regular feedback avoids blindsiding the employee at evaluation time with an unsatisfactory review. So in the same paragraph where this university is instructing its supervisors in how to give an effective review, it essentially lays out one of the biggest problems of reviews, which is that annually is not sufficient for getting effective feedback on the books. And it is not frequent enough to be giving you a picture of what has somebody's progression been. If somebody started off the year not doing so hot, and maybe by Q2, they started to improve, and by Q3, things were really much better, and all of Q4, they're exceeding your expectations. Does that mean that they get an average because maybe their overall performance has been average? Does that mean that they get an average increase, an average review? That doesn't make any sense. So annually doesn't make sense. I would go on and on about why the annual review isn't good, but I want to move on to what you can do about it. And if you want to hear some of the other reasons, and there are many, that annual reviews are wasted time without the kind of results that you would want to get, give me a shout. I'm happy to talk about this further with you. So what to do instead? I'm going to give you 5 steps, 5 things that you can do instead of the annual review. And it starts with clearly defining expectations and putting those expectations in writing. And the expectations should include adherence to, exemplification of, the core values of the organization. What do we want from every single person who works here? How are you going to contribute to the culture here? That's one set of expectations, the core values and the way in which we want people to show up. Also, KPIs in terms of what do I need from you as your manager? What do I need from you in terms of you're maintaining the status quo? Every job comes with a certain amount of maintenance. We've got to keep doing this. For example, we've got to keep creating customer satisfaction, or we've got to keep ensuring that emails that come into our organization from outside are responded to within 24 hours. That's a kind of maintenance level expectation. And then also we need to set expectations for this month, this quarter. What are, what are the projects? What are the initiatives that we expect you to do as well? In what way are you going to add to the capacity of the company? In what way are you going to create something new that doesn't exist in the company yet? So those are the 3 areas where we recommend you clearly define the expectations for somebody and put all of that in writing. Now, with those expectations, the second thing that you're going to do is create a scorecard. So the scorecard is you are meeting, you are exceeding, or you are falling short of my expectations. So this is a 3-point scale. You are falling short is a 1, meeting my expectations is 2, exceeding my expectations is a 3. So it's a 3-point scale. And this is important because the usual 4 or 5-point scale often creates score inflation. People don't feel as though they can give somebody a 3 on a 5-point scale because, it's just like grade inflation, where a C used to be considered kind of average performance. Now, if you take home a C, your parents are going to be devastatingly disappointed in you. Even a B is kind of, I don't know if that's good enough. So when you go to a 3-point scale, you're exceeding my expectations, you're meeting my expectations, or you're falling short of my expectations. That grade inflation, as it were, is very much diminished. It doesn't erase it completely, but it diminishes it significantly. So, and each of those scores has got to have stories behind it. You are meeting my expectations. For instance, when you have, let's say, had 90% customer satisfaction across this quarter. 90%. That is meeting my expectations. The That's the minimum that we expect from everybody. Unless you're getting 90%, at least there's a problem. If you're getting 95%, then we want to learn from you about what you're doing in order to accomplish that. 95% is exceeding my expectation. We gave you this project to do. You delivered it. It was fine. Everything is good. No problem. You met my expectations. It was on time. It was on budget, and it was on scope. Now that's meeting expectations. On time, on budget, and on scope meets expectations. Ahead of schedule, under budget, with even greater scope than we initially outlined. That exceeds expectations. It's really easy when you set clear expectations to fall short, to meet those expectations, or to exceed those expectations. So you're going to create this scorecard on the core values of the company and the specific expectations that you have for this particular team member. All right. Now, you're also, when it comes to it, you're going to set a cadence for these evaluational moments where you're going to go through this scorecard. And I would recommend that you do this no less often than every 3 months, every quarter. But Aaron, I hear you saying, we already determined that the annual review is so odious because it takes up so much time without delivering enough value. Well, two things. One is if you switch to quarterly, or potentially better, depending on the kind of pace of your organization, potentially better every 2 months, you're going to actually get useful information and useful improvement and useful experience out of these evaluations. So one thing is it's not wasted time. The second thing is that this is going to be, while it is structured, it's going to be considerably less formal. There's not going to be a whole lot of signatures and fanfare and all of that kind of stuff. You're going to have been doing this continuously, and I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself, but you're going to make this an easy, low-impact thing. The scorecard is always there. You're having, if you're following our other guidance about how to effectively manage people, you're having weekly one-on-ones. So you're meeting with people every week and having some of these conversations. Maybe this week you touch on this core value and this project, and we talk a little bit about how it's going and about you get my feedback, not only during those one-on-ones, but also often and frequently between those one-on-ones. So there is a lot of communication going on. All right. And this is important, you have a copy of the scorecard that you use to evaluate your direct report, and your direct report also has a copy of that scorecard, and they use it to evaluate themselves. And I'm getting ahead of myself again. So, what to do instead? Number 4, the fourth piece of this is, as I was just saying, you're going to continually provide feedback. You're going to be continually evaluating them and providing feedback verbally, taking notes often about the kind of feedback that you've been providing, both congratulatory feedback and corrective or adjusting feedback. You are giving them feedback all the time. And then, as I mentioned, I got ahead of myself into that you, as the supervisor and your direct report, are both going to evaluate that direct report's performance. So on each of those key pieces of their performance, the values of the company, the ways in which you expect every person to be contributing to the team, contributing to the culture, and also the specific things for which they are comfortable. And it might, not comfortable, but responsible. It might be simply status quo is one item, maintaining the status quo. And the second item might be initiatives or projects. So that's just 2 items. We're not talking about creating, one for how you're doing with email and phone communication, and one for how you're doing with customer support, and one for how you're doing with, some other part of your areas of responsibility. It might be as simple as How are you doing at maintaining the status quo? How are you doing at delivering on your projects and initiatives to advance the company in toward its goals? It may be as simple as that. And then, as I mentioned earlier, you have stories to support the scores that you've given them. One, you're falling short of my expectations. Two, you are meeting my expectations. Three, you are exceeding my expectations. And also tell them by how much. By how much are you falling short? In what ways are you falling short? How much are you exceeding my expectations? In what ways are you exceeding my expectations? I'm not discounting the value of getting specific. I'm simply taking some of the pressure off of the grade inflation. So each of you fills out this report. Each of you has stories to back up your scores, and you have a conversation about them. Your direct report goes first and says, here's how I'm seeing my performance. Here's how I am seeing my performance. And then you're also then after your direct report goes, you provide your thoughts about here's how I see your performance. And as they are speaking, you have a printout or you have called up on your iPad with an iPencil, you have called up their scorecard and you are able to take notes by hand about your impressions of what they are saying about their scorecard. And when you go over what you've said, you stop taking notes, you just go over the scorecard. They also have the scorecard, which they have received in advance. So there's absolutely nothing that's a surprise. And you say, what thoughts do you have for me about what I've said in my scorecard? And you take notes, again, right there on your scorecard, you take notes about their input on your reflection on their performance. And here's one important piece of this is that you do not require them to sign anything. Your evidence, should you ever need it, your evidence that they have been given an opportunity to review your input, that they have seen it, that they've had an opportunity to give you feedback, they've had an opportunity to respond. Your evidence for all of that is the fact that you've taken notes, both on their scorecard and on your own. So it is not necessary ever to have somebody sign their performance review. And what you have now at the end of the year is you have not only an annual review, but you have an ability to look at the progression across the year. If you've done this every quarter in 4 steps, or if you've done it every 2 months, then you've got this progression in 6 steps, and you can look at the trends. And so that's another way in which this is incredibly much more valuable. So I've taken almost 20 minutes of your time. I hope that you've found it incredibly valuable. I hope that you are considering, if you have been still doing annual reviews, I hope you've been considering ditching those annual reviews for good. And I know this is a complex topic that I've handled pretty simply, because this is a topic that very often, we work with clients. It takes hours to really let go of the annual review sometimes, and then build what's going to be next. So if you have questions, if you want to talk about how does this work, if you want to talk about how do we take this and make sure that we are compliant with the things that we need, how do we make sure that our employment attorneys, that our HR team is happy with our documentation. If you have questions about that stuff, I hope you will reach out. I'm happy to talk about this anytime.